Marco Polo, he wrote about a land to the south, and a lot of those theories were based on the belief that if you had this land in the north, you had to have that land in the south to balance the earth, otherwise it would tip over or whatever would happen. So there was always a theory that they had to see land in the south. And as far as the Portuguese, the theories were that there was the mahogany ships, there was stories of lost cannons and secret discoveries, but none of that's been found to be true. And there's actually been quite a few historians who claim that, having looked at the research, there's no evidence to think that the Portuguese or the Spanish or the Chinese ever arrived in Australia. So as far as we know, Willem Janszoon is the first known European to have arrived in Australia.
And what about Willem Janszoon himself? What was his background? What was his life?
Well, they say we didn't know a lot about him, but he was born in Amsterdam, they believe, in 1570. So, and they actually say he would have witnessed the battles with the Spanish Armada against the English and the Dutch in 1588. So he had quite a seafaring history. And he first went to the Indies in 1602, I think with the fleet, well, one of the first fleets that sailed. I think the first fleet went in 1598, and I think he was probably, shortly after that he went to the Indies. The Dutch are often portrayed badly by the English because of the competition they always had. They always had very strong competition. The English were known to be jealous of the Dutch because they were a small nation, and they actually were running rings around them at the sea and trade, and that really annoyed them. So the past history has always been that the English would put a lot of criticism to the Dutch, and those terms like Dutch treat, Dutch courage, Dutch uncle, Dutch everything was always as a jealous sort of reminder that they weren't happy. So I think a lot of those things have been passed down from history. Perhaps they were a bit more harsh on the local people, but no more than the English or the Spanish or the Portuguese. So to single out the Dutch is a very big call to make.
The making of the film itself, the people in the film, all Dutch background?
No. I had the main actors that were reenacting on the beach. They were Dutch friends of mine, but many of the historians were English, Australian, without Dutch background. So the story's not really told from a Dutch perspective. It's actually told from a very universal perspective. And they all back up the story that we were telling.
And I know you were saying you've been studying this for many years in a kind of formal way. How did you prepare for this film?
Well, I've had a university background, and I suppose history's always been very interesting. I've got a journalism background, studied journalism, media studies, film production. So I have got a history of,
But so where does the information that you did gather, where does it come from?
Okay, well, I suppose firstly I was born in Holland, so that's a point that would make you more alert to the issues. Although growing up I never felt that Dutch. I came out as a 4-year-old, and I was always happy to be classed as an Aussie, and didn't want to have much to do with Dutch culture. That's when I was younger. But the more I read, the more I realised that the Dutch part of Australia was being pushed aside. And it's actually been pushed aside even to the present day. I still hear historians on television talking about when Cook discovered the country, and when the Dutch don't even get a mention. And in a recent immigration booklet for new migrants, the Dutch got 1 or 2 paragraphs or lines, and the rest then goes over to the English. And even that is wrong, because they talk about the Dutch with the Portuguese as first arriving here, and the Portuguese were never. There's no proof that they ever arrived here. Right. Look, I think the profile of Cook has been so large that the story has been presented to children in primary school, and it's almost like a not a myth, but what's the word I'm looking for? It's a story of a hero. It's an icon, and he's become that. And I don't think people have been very interested in breaking that. We're happy to keep those values, and so they've kind of underplayed the Dutch landings as not being as worthy as, like, by saying you crash into a country or stumble onto it, you actually diminish its worth. And Nick Birmingham, who's actually English, he wrote a lot of history about this, and he wrote that the Dutch were always typified as bumbling into places like the West Coast. They crashed into it or accidentally discovered. It was never a serious discovery, whereas he says, and I'm quoting what he wrote, the Royal Academy of the British were always much more, they knew where they were going, and it was much more official. And I do believe there has still been a whether it's a campaign of intent or accidentally portrayed, that they have played down the Dutch arrivals here.
Do you think the story's being told quite differently in the Netherlands, or would there be, obviously there wouldn't be as much interest?
No, yeah, I think you're right. When I've travelled there, the story hasn't had that much interest, and I think they do believe it is being told a bit differently, that they were the first known people to come to, Europeans to come to Australia, and they just take it as a fact. But I don't think there's this impetus there to discuss it in detail. It was hard to get interest in the film and to find an angle when we don't have a map. Well, we do have a map, but it's a copy of the original map. We don't have a journal of Willem Janszoon, and we don't have a picture of Willem Janszoon. So you're starting off making a story about somebody that you have to almost invent some things about. Not invent the story, but what he looked like. And so I thought, well, they did that with Shakespeare. We never knew what Shakespeare looked like, and even that bust we see, people believe that might not have been him at all. But we take that as fact. So I thought, well, if we can do it with Columbus, Shakespeare, people like that, why can't we do that with Willem Janszoon? So I thought we'll invent a picture of what he looked like.
Did the research involve going to Holland?
Yeah, I did, and I actually had a lot of help from Ab Hoving from the Rijksmuseum, and what's his name? Meneer Wagemars from the Amsterdam Historic Museum. So the curators of these museums were very helpful in allowing me to shoot footage there, to film in various places. The Museum van Loon in Amsterdam, right. I was allowed to get some nice shots in there. Even the porcelain flas, the Delft pottery. Mm-hmm. They were quite happy for me to use some of the shots from there. Cook was actually using Tasman's map to navigate those waters, and that's often left out. But it comes up quite a few places that Cook was using early Dutch maps to navigate. And when we teach Cook's history today, he does it all by himself. He goes into waters that nobody else ever sailed before.